V-22 Osprey tilt-rotors across the US Marine Corps, Air Force and Navy are finally cleared for flying operations again more than 3 months after a fatal crash off the coast of Japan led to all of the aircraft being grounded. However, the investigation into the cause of that crash is still ongoing, and it will take the service's time to fully reconstitute regular flight operations with some restrictions. The US Navy's Naval Air Systems Command, NAVAIR, which oversees the V-22 Joint Program Office, JPO, announced that it has deemed the Osprey safe to fly. An internal Department of Defense Safety Investigation Board, SIB, investigation into the November 29, 2023 crash involving an Air Force CV-22B Osprey off Japan's Yakushima Island has concluded, but the results will not be made public. A separate Accident Investigation Board, AIB investigation, which the Air Force is leading, is ongoing, and when it concludes, an unclassified copy of the report is expected to be publicly released. Since the Osprey first flew in 1989, more than 400 V-22 variants have been delivered to the Marines, Air Force and Navy, as well as the Japan Self-Defense Forces, JSDF, the latter being the only non-US operator of the type. The Marine Corps is by far the largest operator, with some 348 MV-22Bs spread across 17 squadrons. To date, US officials say they know what failed on the CV-22B that crashed last year, killing all 8 individuals on board, but not why it failed. NAVAIR has directed all operators across the US military to implement various additional safety measures and increased maintenance checks, details about which have not been released due to operational security concerns as part of lifting the grounding order. The Marines disclosed in a press release today that a number of its MV-22Bs assigned to an Africa-focused crisis response task force have already been flying since January, under a very specific operationally necessary banner. The Marine Corps has confidence in the Osprey, and we are laser-focused on the safety and mission readiness of our pilots and aircrew, US Marine Corps Lieutenant General Bradford J. Gehring, Deputy Commandant for Marine Corps Aviation, said in a statement today. We have worked extensively on plans and timelines that support a deliberate, methodical and safe return to flight. We are flying the Osprey again because our Airworthiness Authority cleared it for flight, because we trust our well-established operational risk management procedures, and most of all, because we trust our professional pilots, aircrew and maintainers to safely get this combat-proven aircraft back into the fight. Another Osprey crash, involving a Marine MV-22B that went down off the coast of Australia in August 2023, also remains under investigation. However, there are no indications so far of any links between the circumstances of that incident and the one that occurred off Japan's coast some 3 months later. It is not immediately clear if the JSDF, which grounded its MV-22Bs first after the November crash, will now resume flying those aircraft in line with the US military's decision, and/or if Japanese authorities may place additional restrictions on US Osprey operations in their country's airspace. American military officials have been regularly engaging with their counterparts in Japan on matters related to the V-22. As noted, US military officials say they have determined what they call a material failure that led to the CV-22B crash last November, but have not yet been able to determine why that component failed. The exact parts that failed are unknown, but from statements that have been provided so far, they are elements of the propeller gearboxes on the aircraft. This is a part of the Osprey's design that has proven to be problematic in various ways over the years. We have high confidence that we understand what component failed and how it failed. What we're still working on is the why. Marine Corps Colonel Brian Taylor, the V-22 JPO Program Manager at NAVAIR, said at a media roundtable that the War Zone and other outlets attended earlier this week. We understand generally the mechanics of what played out. At the same time, Taylor explained that this is the first time that we've seen this particular component fail in this way, and described what is currently known to have happened in the November crash as unprecedented. A complicating factor was the fact that this aircraft crashed in the ocean, and so there was a pretty significant diving and recovery effort to recover the aircraft, NAVAIR's Taylor noted. So that took about 30 days to recover the wreckage. Taylor, speaking generally, noted that a wreck being underwater for so long can cause serious corrosion that can further impede an investigation. This being said, NAVAIR's assessment that a potential material failure was the cause of the November 29th crash was what led to the grounding on December 6th. This indicates that additional sources of information were already available before the wreckage was recovered. Taylor said that data collected in the course of the various investigations into the November 29th crash, coupled with data from approximately 750,000 flight hours that V-22 variants have flown in US military service in the past 2 decades, were used to craft the mitigating steps. Extensive simulation and modelling work has also been done. New but undisclosed changes to standards and procedures for operating the aircraft and responding to certain emergency situations, as well as how often certain maintenance procedures are performed, have been implemented as a result. There will be no hardware changes to the aircraft. The lifting of the grounding order and the implementation of these mitigation actions does not mean that the Marines, Air Force and Navy will instantaneously go back to flying Ospreys regularly in training or operationally. The aircraft have maintained to a certain degree over the past 3 months or so, but will still need to be checked out by maintenance personnel. Pilots who have been able to conduct some level of simulator training since the grounding, at best, will need to take the required steps to regain their required flight currency. Each service has developed its own specific plans for doing this. The Marine Corps' 3-phased approach begins with a focus on regaining basic flight currency, rebuilding units' instructor cadres, and achieving proficiency in core and basic skill training for pilots and aircrew, according to the Marine Corps' press release today. After that, squadrons will follow well-established training and readiness manuals to gain proficiency in basic and advanced mission sets, demonstrating their ability to conduct the core missions of an MV-22 squadron.